In this video, you and I get to enforce our posture requirements on the customer computer. Let's begin. I'd like you to imagine that we have successfully implemented the NAC agent on this computer. We've verified it's working, and now we want to actually implement policy regarding certain posture requirements that have to be present on this computer. A simple example would be the requirement for an antivirus product. Now, if it turns out that this computer doesn't have an antivirus installed, or it's not the right version, or it's not updated, we can perform remediation in several flavors. We can put that client into a specific quarantine VLAN, and inside that VLAN, we could have the resources, for example, the update server for the antivirus, or perhaps provide limited access to the internet so the client can get the updated version of the antivirus. And an option that ICE even provides for us is that we can actually put the files on the ICE server itself. And then the ICE server could provide those resources for the client to get up to speed. The first thing we're going to do is set up some of the requirements regarding what we want the postures to be for our devices who are connecting to our network. And to do that, we're going to go to Policy, and from the Policy drop-down menu under Policy Elements, we're going to go to Results. So the path we're currently on is Policy, Policy Elements, Results, and then under the Posture section, we're looking at Requirements. These requirements that come by default with ICE, we could edit, delete, or add requirements regarding posturing. And the ones here by default are related to Windows and Macintosh regarding anti-spyware and antivirus. So let's do this. Let's modify this requirement right here, which is called any AV installation win, which is related to all versions of Windows, and it's just looking for an installation of some flavor of antivirus. And if you don't have some flavor of an antivirus, the remediation action at the moment is to send you a message only saying, hey, you're not in compliance. However, if a user is not in compliance, wouldn't it be nice to give them resources so they could fix their computer and get up to date? And I think that'd be a great idea. So before we edit this requirement, let's go up here to remediation actions, and let's provide the software required for remediation. So if we expand remediation actions, there is lots of options here that we could use for remediation. We could make a file available from the ICE server. If they don't have an antivirus software package, perhaps it's an antivirus install package. We could provide updates for anti-spyware, antivirus. We could launch a program. We could serve them up a link where they click on that link, and hopefully that leads them to the remediation of their computer. And we also have some Windows updates remediation options as well. So let's take one example of antivirus. Let's say that we're looking for some flavor of antivirus, and if the customer doesn't have it, we want the ICE server to have an installation package for some antivirus software that the customer can install right there. So if we click on File Remediation, implying that we want to make available a file so the client can remediate and fix itself, by default, there are no files. We need to go ahead and add one. So we'll click on Add, and let's go ahead and name this Microsoft Security Essentials. That's one of many different anti-spyware and antivirus programs that we could use. This one happens to be free from Microsoft. And if we knew the exact version, we could put that here as well to help identify this remediation file. And let's just go ahead and call this test version 2. That way when we see it, we'll know, okay, that was that remediation file that we put there. And then we click on Browse. And now we're browsing on the local file system of our administrator computer that we're sitting at. And we'd select the installation program for MSE, Microsoft Security Essentials, if that's what we wanted to use. And then once we click on Submit, we're going to have that as a file remediation we can make available to clients so they can do remediation. And because this file is directly on the ICE server and they already have connectivity to that ICE server, it makes it very easy. Now that we have this file remediation in place, let's go down to requirements. And let's edit this any AV installation win requirement. We can double click on it to edit it. We'll call it Windows must have AV. It'll apply to any version of Windows. So here it's using a condition called any AV Windows installed. And as an example of the conditions we can use for our requirements for the posture, if we select Cisco defined conditions, and we also have the ability to create and use user defined conditions as well, this can act as a great reminder of the types of things that we could look for on a computer regarding compliance. We could be looking for certain files, registry entries, applications or services they're running, and the compound conditions are looking for multiple details. For example, if we're looking for vendor XYZ and a certain version of XYZ, those could be set up as a compound condition to look for exactly what you want on that computer. In our example, however, we're going to use the option of any AV Windows installed. We don't care what vendor it is as long as it's recognized by the NAC agent as an antivirus software. Now, for the remediation action, if the customer does not have an antivirus installed, here's what we want to do. We're going to click on the plus symbol, and instead of just giving them a message, let's go ahead and choose the remediation called Microsoft Security Essentials. Now, what this is that's the file remediation that we had set up. So we'll select that, and let's also give them a message. The endpoint has failed check for any antivirus installation. Please install the Microsoft Security Essentials, blah, blah, blah. So they can see that message as part of the remediation process. And then we'll click on Done. Now, of course, in addition to clicking on Done, we're also going to go down here to the bottom left-hand corner of this window and click on Save to make sure those changes are saved. So what have we done so far? We created a file for remediation. We called upon that remediation file in this requirement called Win must have AV, but we haven't forced the rule yet that says we want to use this as our policy for posturing. To actually use this requirement, we're going to click right here on Posture. So the location for this is Policy and Posture. And in our posture policy, we haven't yet specified that we're requiring any specific rule. So let's create this rule in our posture policy. And we'll call it Windows must have an AV. And regarding operating systems, we're going to apply that to any flavor of Windows. So we'll select Windows All. We're only going to force this on users of Active Directory. So let's go ahead and click on the plus symbol regarding other conditions. We'll create a new condition and specify we want to make sure that the Active Directory external group that the user belongs to, who's using the computer that's coming into the network, we want to make sure that that user is a member of domain users. And then, as a result of these matching, we want to go ahead and have our requirement be, and we'll use the drop down for this, the Win must have AV. That's the name of that requirement that we modified just a few moments ago. So we're going to select Win must have AV and click on Done. So the way this all knits together is that a user of Active Directory who's coming in, if they want to be compliant, they must have an antivirus running on their Windows computer. And if they don't, because we're supplying a remediation file, which is the Microsoft Security Essentials, that user will have the opportunity, while they're quarantined, to go ahead and download directly from the ICE server the Microsoft Security Essentials and install it on their computer. That also presumes that the user has the rights to install the software on their local computer. And of course, the all-important going to the very bottom and clicking on Save to make sure that those changes are saved. Now, there is one other step that we really want to do, and that is under Policy and Authorization. For our authorization rules, which are processed from top to bottom, if a user and PC are authenticated and they're compliant, it'll be this rule. If the user is coming in and the status is unknown, meaning they don't have a NAC agent running, so they'll get this rule. And what we also want to do is we want to add another rule that says if you are non-compliant we want to go ahead and do that redirection over to the ICE server so the user can go ahead and remediate. Now, to create that new rule, we'll simply borrow most of the config from this existing rule. We'll click the down arrow and let's select duplicate above. And we'll name this user with non-compliant PC, and we'll modify the conditions here to change this last column from unknown to non-compliant. We'll click on done and we'll click on save. So just to confirm, if that user is non-compliant, they'll get the posture authorization profile, which also redirects back to the ICE server. There's also a downloadable access control list associated with that authorization profile. And then if the user does the remediation, if they don't have antivirus, but they then get it from the ICE server, they install it, then the next time they go through this authorization process, if they're compliant, they'll go ahead and match on this authorization rule, which has its own downloadable ACL and has no redirection associated with it. And at that point, the user should have full access to the network. So let's test this. I believe we currently have someone logged on. So we'll go to Operations and Authentications. And sure enough, at the moment we have IT Bob. We'll go ahead and click on Show Live Sessions. And from here, under COA, the change of authorization, let's go ahead and shut down that port and terminate that existing session. I just want to make sure that the switch and ICE and everybody knows that Bob is no longer authenticated, and that way we can manually restart the process. So if we go over to the switch, it just put that port to down, which is great. And let's make sure we're in interface configuration for 0/7, and let's do a no shutdown to bring it back up. So that port just came up. If we do a show authentication sessions for interface gig 0/7 and press enter, this is fantastic. It's currently showing us the redirect ACL. It's also got a current downloadable ACL called ACL during posture, which is perfect. So if we go back to Bob's computer here, it says there's at least one mandatory requirement failing. You are required to update your system before you can access the network. So if we click on Show Details, there's the mandatory requirement. Windows must have AV. Also, it's got a remediation timer by default of 4 minutes. And whenever I bring up the pen tool, it freezes the screen. So I'm going to click on Hide Details, and I'm going to click on Repair. That's our remediation. So there's the text message that we asked it to give us. This endpoint has failed. Check for AV installation. Please install MSE, blah, blah, blah. If they click on the download button, that will download the file that we associated for remediation of that problem. So we'll click on download. There's the MSC install. I'll go ahead and just put it right on the desktop. Click on save. And now we have that file MSC install. So let's go ahead and run the install for Microsoft Security Essentials by double clicking on it. We'll say yes to everything. And now it's installing Microsoft Security Essentials on this computer. This is Bob's computer. And it says it is done. Now it wants to go ahead and do some updates. Now, if we are still in our remediation setting, meaning we haven't been given full access yet, the updates for Microsoft Essentials is not going to work because we don't have access out to the live network yet. However, if we minimize Microsoft Security Essentials, in the background, what just happened, let me bring up the switch, it just went through re-authentication again. And this time, it appears that we are compliant because we have the antivirus software running. And that's why the NAC agent is now saying that we have full network access. To verify that, we could do a couple things. We could go to Microsoft Security Essentials and do the update, which if we really do have full access now, that should work. We could also go to the switch, we could hit the up arrow key and do a show authentication sessions for interface gig 0/7. And that also is indicating that we now have the access control list associated with the compliant authorization profile. Here's the VLAN policy associated with that authorization profile. And there's no redirection anymore over to the ICE server. And if we go back to Microsoft Security Essentials, the update was successful, which also implies that we're working. We're out to the internet. For the NAC agent, if we click on OK, we have the NAC agent sitting down here in our taskbar. If we click on that and give it a few seconds, the NAC agent is currently showing us what it sees that we have installed on our computer. We've got Windows Defender as an anti-spyware, and we have Microsoft Security Essentials acting as an anti-spyware as well as antivirus. And as a result of having an antivirus software installed, the NAC agent saw that, reported that to the ICE server. The ICE server said you're compliant, and that allowed us to hit that authorization rule for the compliant computer, giving us full access to the network. The other cool thing we can do from ICE is we can go to Operations and Reports. And there are several reports. One of them is called Endpoints and Users. If we select that, and then select Posture Detail Assessment, and then specify that we want to run that report. Let's run it for the last 30 minutes, and we'll click on Run to actually generate that report. And if we click on the details for Bob, here's showing us the operating system Bob is running. There's the NAC agent that's running on Bob's computer. Here's the antivirus software installed, which is the Microsoft Security Essentials. And here's the anti-spyware that we weren't checking for, but because the agent saw it, it's reporting that as well. So the Windows Defender as well as Microsoft Security Essentials for anti-spyware. In this video, we've implemented the requirements for an antivirus to be present on our computer. We provide remediation files on the ICE server in the event the client didn't have antivirus software running. And then we implemented and verified that the policy worked on the client computer. I have had a great time in this video, and I'm so glad you joined me for it. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.